Welcome to this explainer on awakening the soul, which is basically Carl Jung's ultimate guide to the inner crisis. Look, I want you to know right off the bat that this presentation isn't just some dry collection of psychological facts. It's actually intended to act as a mirror. If you're watching this right now, it is very, very likely because you've reached a highly specific point in your life. You know that silent, intimate, and frankly unbearable moment where something deep inside you just begins to scream. You might not even be able to put a perfect name to what's happening, but you feel it in your bones, right? You just know you can't keep living the exact same way you have been.
So let me ask you, are you living or are you just existing? It's a pretty piercing question, I know. But the truth is, most people live their lives as functional zombies. They wake up, they work, they produce, they obey, and then they repeat the whole thing over again. And society? Society tells us that this is completely normal. But Carl Jung's work tells us something entirely different. It's not normal, it's just common. And common is absolutely not synonymous with healthy. You are likely feeling the massive exhaustion of this automated existence, an existence that's been shaped entirely by the expectations of others and these totally worn-out social roles. And that brings us to this fascinating phenomenon known as the inner crack. Think of it as an invisible rupture. It separates who you actually are from who you've been pretending to be, just to survive, to fit in, and to please everybody else. When you exhaust yourself wearing these heavy social masks day in and day out, your soul basically lets out this silent, unbearable scream. Sure, the system rewards your obedience with little hits of pleasure. You get a stable salary, you get some social approval, but the price you pay is your absolute truth and your inner voice. Over time, you just forget who you really are. Okay, let's really dive into this, because here is where everything flips upside down. We live in a culture that views suffering as a complete negative. Society tells you that if you're suffering, if you're feeling anxious or depressed, well, you're defective, you're failing at life. But the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung viewed this exact same suffering in a completely different light. To Jung, this isn't a sign of brokenness at all. It's a sign of readiness. It is a necessary psychic initiation. That intense anguish you're feeling, it isn't an illness. It's literally your consciousness desperately trying to emerge and break free. Jung actually had a specific name for this exact phenomenon, the call to individuation. It's a psychic process where your soul simply draws a line in the sand and refuses to continue living under false masks. So what you might be calling an emotional collapse or some terrible existential crisis is in reality the beginning of a profound awakening. You are not falling apart. What's falling apart is the fictional character you created to survive. You aren't broken. You are being pushed to be born again. Let's look at how this builds, because the psyche systematically raises the volume when you ignore it. It always starts subtly. Step one is just this nagging, vague discomfort. Maybe it's a strange, unsettling dream, or just a quiet, persistent sense of fatigue. But if you try to numb that discomfort with constant productivity or superficial relationships, the unconscious turns the dial up to step two, despair. And if you still refuse to listen, boom, step three, complete emotional collapse. You have to understand, the symptoms aren't obstacles on your path. They literally are the path. And they are forcing you to stop and finally look within. And this perfectly illustrates exactly why we get so stuck. Listen to this quote from Jung. The greatest threat to the individual's soul in modernity is not madness nor misery, but massification. Massification. That is the transformation of the human being into a totally replaceable statistical cog in a machine that values conformity way, way more than authenticity. The system actively wants to keep you emotionally anesthetized. It rewards your obedience with these incredibly cheap distractions, binge-watching shows, delivery apps, social media likes, all deliberately designed to keep you from realizing that you are trapped in a cage. Which leads us to a deeply tragic but absolutely crucial reality. The unlived life is a disease from which one can die. What we see everywhere in the modern world are people just slowly dying one single day at a time, entirely trapped in a narrative they never even wrote. They followed all the rules, they got the good job, they posted the smiling photos online, and yet they feel totally, completely empty inside. We have to deconstruct this farce. You have to realize that what society calls normalcy is actually just a clever disguise for psychic death. Now, what's really fascinating is how our own mind actually tries to help us pull off this prison break. Enter the concept of synchronicity. Jung understood that the unconscious isn't just some dusty storage bin for your repressed trauma, it's a living, breathing intelligence. When your ego is finally beaten down enough to listen, your unconscious heavily intensifies its symbolic activity. Outer reality miraculously begins to mirror your inner transformation. It's not magic, guys. It's your psyche actively magnetizing exactly what it needs to evolve and heal.
So how do you actually know when your unconscious is speaking to you? Well, it doesn't shout, it whispers. It insinuates. It might be a random song on the radio that suddenly makes you cry for absolutely no logical reason. Or a passage in a book that feels like it was written intimately, just for you. A recurring dream that you just can't shake. Or, frankly, an unexpected explainer exactly like the one you're watching right now. It is not a coincidence that you stumbled upon this explainer today. From a Jungian perspective, this is your soul actively seeking the keys to escape its internal prison, and this is the exact message you magnetize to yourself.
But grabbing those keys means you have to open a very, very heavy door. You have to face the shadow. The shadow is the hidden abyss of the self. It holds all your repressed emotions, your unresolved traumas, and the desires you've completely denied because society told you they were inappropriate or wrong. Integrating these hidden, messy parts isn't just some fun spiritual luxury. It is an absolute existential urgency. Before you can ever find true freedom, you have to cross the terrifying threshold of feeling everything you have been avoiding for years.
And as you approach that threshold, you are going to meet the inner dragon. This archetype represents all your deep-seated resistances. Just look at the absolute lies this dragon whispers to keep you safely locked inside your polished little prison. It tells you that you're literally crazy for wanting change. It says you are totally unprepared. It screams that you will lose everything, you'll disappoint your family, and you'll regret it forever. It shows you every possible worst-case scenario. Why? Because the dragon knows that if you actually make the leap, it dies. So the crucial point to understand here is this. The ego fears symbolic death. I really want to speak directly to you right now. The intense fear and paralyzing anxiety you are feeling about changing your life, that is not a sign that you're making a mistake. It is simply the ego resisting the massive psychic leap required for your transformation. The ego is inherently cowardly. It only cares about survival and staying comfortable. But your soul desperately wants to live. We have to push past the ego's resistance, and this famous quote from Jung is the absolute key to doing it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You literally cannot sit in the passenger seat anymore. You have to take charge. If you don't drag these unconscious desires and hidden shadows out into the light, they are going to pull your strings from the dark forever, and you'll just helplessly shrug your shoulders and call it your destiny. You have to take the reins.
And to actually take those reins, you have to swallow a really hard, unflinching truth. Ready? No one is coming to save you. No spiritual guru, no perfect therapist, no romantic partner, no perfectly timed miracle, and certainly not this explainer. The system actually profits off your passivity. It wants you to keep waiting around for a savior. But the responsibility for your life is exclusively yours. You have to accept this, because the exact moment you stop waiting for a rescue boat is the very moment your true liberation finally begins. Let's contrast these two ways of living. On one side, you have the childish trap of the collective unconscious. Waiting, dependency, passivity. It's the voice of the wounded kid inside you, hoping someone will just hand you a manual or a permission slip. But you are the adult now. You have to shift to radical responsibility. That means owning your choices and taking full charge of your internal healing. Look, even if your pain was completely caused by others, the healing depends entirely on your own maturity and your willingness to step up and act without any guarantees. And as you prepare to take that step, I want you to completely reframe how you view fear. Fear is not the enemy here. It is not a red light warning you to retreat. Fear is actually the guardian of the portal to your real life. Every single time you feel absolute stomach-dropping dread about breaking free or taking a major risk, it's the exact marker indicating that you are about to touch something incredibly sacred, your true, authentic self. The authentic life begins exactly where you fear to tread the most. So, here we are. We're standing at this invisible line separating the life you currently live from the life you actually came here to live. You don't need to be 100% ready. Honestly, no one ever is. You just need to be tired enough of the lie to step forward into the unknown. I choose to cross. Do you? Are you going to continue dragging yourself through a half-life that makes you sick? Or are you going to intentionally step across the threshold today? The choice is entirely yours. Keep learning, keep pushing yourself, and I'll see you in the next explainer.